Oh, very good. How are you?
Very good indeed.
How are you feeling?
I'm feeling okay. It's a lot better than this time last week.
It's very good. Very good to hear.
How's everything on your side?
Nice, very nice. Good weather.
Nice. It's starting to get hot.
This is the kind of in-between moment where it's still
Okay,
tolerable,
no.
but I think in a couple of weeks it's going to be very, very hot here. But
Yeah,
so far it's nice, even cool in the evening, so it's okay.
that's good.
Yeah, and we will wait for the people to join in. We have a lot of interesting things to talk about today. We are recording, right?
Let me. Yeah, we are. I see
Okay,
the.
that's
That was good. I almost forgot.
okay. Let's give it a couple of more minutes. A lot of interesting things happening all around us.
Absolutely.
So let me see. I think before everyone joins, I think the funniest thing was this Juno accident. Did you hear about that?
Juno. No, I
No?
didn't. I
Oh,
don't think.
it's an amazing kind of accident that happened. So Juno is a project and it's proof of stake. So they decided that there was some whale in their ecosystem who scammed an airdrop. So they decided to take his money away from him, and it was like $36 million.
I do recall this now. It was on like one of the Cosmos
Yes,
chains or something like
exactly. Yeah,
this.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. It's in the Cosmos
Yeah.
ecosystem. And like, let's start with that. Like, this is in it of itself kind of very interesting decentralization example. But this is like nothing because after they have decided to take away this money, they have accidentally sent it to a wrong address, which is actually not accessible.
Yeah. And all of the like validators gave it the okay and sent it
Yeah,
off, right?
yeah. So they say that it's reversible in a way that next voting period or something they will be able to move it back or something like that. But it was kind of a shit show of an unbelievable proportions. Yeah, it's widely covered. I will send probably a link on Twitter later about the. There's a CoinDesk article about it, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that
Mm.
that was kind of the one of the top things that happened this week in terms of um, mistakes on like so many levels.
Yeah. I mean, like funny that they're like blocking it or I mean, I don't want to say stealing, but stealing or like freezing the funds from the guy, and
Yeah,
then
it's like
even
even if it's your keys, it could still be not your funds if the ecosystem,
yeah,
is not
rem,
diversified enough.
yeah, reminds me a bit of like a banking system.
And not in a good way.
Yeah, crazy. Good times. I saw the guy like had his funds frozen or whatever, and he tweeted about the he tweeted about like the mistake that they'd made, and his pretty much his leaving was like LOL, which I thought was kind of funny.
Oh yeah, totally. Oh, listen, your $36 million are currently in an account that cannot be accessed by anyone.
Yeah.
Totally. Um, Yeah, what else interesting happened? There was this strange event with the UST, which is one of the now it's I think top three stable coins.
This is the USD stablecoin from Luna, is that right?
Yep, that's the one.
Nice.
So somebody sold a large amount of and it went a little bit like below a $1 peg. So it went down to 0.992, and for some reason it caused a panic that caused Luna to drop like 14%. So it was also very weird. And I don't think it will have a long-term effect on the ecosystem, but it was still kind of very harsh reaction to the situation.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a bit fragile.
Yeah.
But yeah, they'll manage. They have a lot of funds.
Yeah, they seem to have like a peg by millions of dollars. If it loses peg, they seem to have a fair bit of buying power to bring it back up.
Yep. Anything else you noticed of interest?
That was about it. One of the things that I do find really interesting in times like this, when the stable coin becomes slightly less stable and this kind of thing, is how exactly curve works, which I have no idea still, but I always find it very fascinating. Like that the peg went down to 0.99 something.
Mm-hmm.
But like if you look on the curve pool, I forget the curve 3 pool or curve 4 pool or whatever. If you look on the pool, like the very different than it would be on, for example, Uniswap. And I think it got down. I have a picture here somewhere, but I'm not going to be able to find it. It got down to like 30% of the pool was not UST or something like this. And I always find this more fascinating than like here I found it. The pool consisted of 73% UST, with the rest of it being the 3 curve. And I always find it super fascinating, like how curve works and that it maintains peg for like, or at least maintains very close to the peg, even though the balance of the pool is very skewed to one side.
Yeah, because it's like two different mechanisms, and I think situations like these create opportunities for arbitrage, where you have a like one pool being very unbalanced. So this is ideally in like health ecosystem. This is the opportunity for arbitrageurs to come in and balance it back and make some profit in the process. So at least that's how it's supposed to work.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I think we should get started with our main topics tonight. And the first one I would like to talk about is the upcoming vote on the reduction of the emission price for new confidential assets on Beam, which is going to be in effect after the hard fork 7.0. And it's a very important issue. And before we get into the specifics, I would like to give a little bit of background about Beam confidential assets and how it works and what is like the meaning of this fee that we're currently talking about reducing. So Beam supports an ability to create new types of assets. And unlike, let's say, Ethereum or many other chains, this ability is not implemented through smart contracts. Actually, it was added before we had smart contracts on Beam. It's actually a fully kind of layer one feature of the node. So the node supports this ability within, like using just a node command or just special transaction to do it. Now, the benefit of this is that Beam confidential assets are exactly as confidential as Beam, which means that when you are sending either a Beam or any other asset type, your transaction is confidential by default, including, just like in Beam, no addresses on the blockchain and all of the amounts are encrypted. And even the type of the asset is actually hidden. And so there is a differentiation between Beam and all of the other assets. But when you send a transaction with an asset, you don't specify which assets you're using. Rather, you're using a zero knowledge proof to say that you're spending like one of the available assets, and in this case, it's not even possible to know what is being sent, like which asset. So it's very, very good in terms of confidentiality. However, this proof depends on the amount of assets in the ecosystem. And when we have added this ability, we didn't have smart contracts back then. So it was just like only a wallet could have created type. And we thought that we would like to avoid just people, just creating a lot of assets for fun, because without smart contracts, it would have been kind of not exactly useless, but limited in its abilities anyway. And that's what we have done at that point. We have added this 3,000 beam deposit fee, which you pay when you create a new asset type, when you register a new asset type. And once if you want to get back this deposit, the deposit is refundable, but only if you have destroyed the asset type. And in order to destroy the asset type, you needed to collect all of the assets emitted and burn them. So in practical terms, if you really use the assets, obviously you probably could not have collected them all back, right? So it's just in cases where you have created an asset and either didn't do anything with it or just play with it a little bit, you could have burned the asset type and got your deposit back. However, when we have added Beam Virtual Machine last year, and with that came the ability to create new assets through smart contracts and not directly from the wallet. So this situation changed significantly, because now, as you know, all of the applications that we're currently thinking about, such as decentralized exchanges and pools, they do create asset types with LP tokens or stable tokens or any other kind of new asset. So this 3,000 beam deposit became an obstacle, and we have decided to kind of ask the community what they think about the idea of reducing this price.
Yeah.
And this is what this vote is going to be about. So tomorrow we're going to publish more details exactly about the process, how this vote is going to happen. In the meantime, there have been a lot of great discussions on our forum about this, and some ideas that were proposed and raised. And I would like to discuss some of them today. You're there on the forum, helping answer questions as well.
Yeah, there's been some really good and interesting ideas and approaches to the CA reduction, and from what I've read of the forum, most of the people are for reducing the amount, given where we're at, the reasons that it was initially set so high, and how things have changed since then.
Yeah, absolutely. So the vote is actually going to be kind of twofold. From one perspective, we are talking about the amount, whether it should be 100 beam or 500 beam or less or more. But it's going to be about how these fees are used, because we can either keep them just like they are today, which is refundable deposit, but everybody understands that if you use a token, there is very little chance of ever collecting it back anyway. Or we can make it a fee for the miner on that specific transaction, which creates a new asset type, which means that whenever you want to create a new asset type, so the transaction fee for that specific type of transaction is higher than regular usual Beam transaction.
Yeah.
So this is kind of the two different options that we have.
And one thing that's worth mentioning that was brought up on the forum by a few people, and this was the idea of have a cost be more denominated in US dollars rather than in Beam, and to do so would need an oracle and this kind of stuff. And from our discussions, and we have thought, but it seems like an overly complex an overly complex kind of idea that will add risk and like attack vectors and further issues that we haven't even identified yet, all for like very little gain, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, so it is a good idea, but however, technically at this point, I do feel that, like, I agree with you. I think it's a little bit difficult to implement well for several reasons. First of all, external oracles, as great as they are, they always add a point of centralization.
Yeah.
And this is like one consideration. The other consideration is like even if we try to make it algorithmic based on smart contract, because it's a layer one functionality and it's not dependent on smart contract execution, it's actually built right into the node. It will be much more complicated to control this way. So yes, the DAO can always vote to chamber, and at this point, it does require a hard fork. We can think about mechanisms which are more kind of versatile than that, but not in this current time frame. So at this point, I think we will try to like understand what is the optimal number for now, which will be like good enough for spam protection, but not too high as to limit or prohibit anyone from creating a new asset type. And also whether this is going to go to the miners or be a deposit that will be locked in the system. So these are kind of the two main considerations. And please stay tuned. So tomorrow we're going to publish more details about how this vote is going to be conducted. We don't have yet deployed our voting platform, so it will be still an off-chain vote, probably the last one. But it's very important for us to get your opinion on the subject, and in either channel that you are using to communicate with us, Telegram, Twitter, forum, or whatever, please do. And with that, if anyone has any suggestions now, it's also a good opportunity to talk about that, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. If you have any questions or thoughts you want to share, please request now, and we'll open up the mic for you.
Okay. In the meantime, while we're waiting for questions, so I noticed that we have Mr. Known Unknown with us, and he has this fancy hexagonal Twitter NFT thing.
Yes.
So it was kind of interesting because I was talking to some of my friends and they asked me like about it, and what they asked is whether I can know like the exact NFT by clicking on the profile, and so yeah, I checked, and turns out yes, you can. When you click on the NFT profile, it opens this kind of pane to the right, which explains exactly which network it was minted on and what is the contract, and also gives you a link to OpenSea for some reason, where you can see not only this specific NFT, also all the other NFTs that this person is holding. And when it's combined with usually cases with the ENS name, you can basically know exactly what this person is doing every single block of the chains that he's trading on, which is kind of, in my opinion, an issue.
It's kind of spooky. I mean, and like can be like more spooky as well. There was one like theoretical thing that I saw someone post on Twitter about like finding someone's address and then sending them an NFT of a picture of their house or something like this. And I thought this would be so like freaky and also dangerous for like the person.
Yeah, it was like the thing. I just like in the beginning of the NFTs, some large organization purchased some, so people like airdrop them a lot of kind of weird and shitty things, and
Yeah.
just to show that, oh, look, they also own this strange thing. Yeah, it's very, like, you can't control it, right? So somebody knows your address, and now it's in your Twitter, right? So anybody clicks on that and goes to your collection and say, oh, okay, I thought that person was normal, but I see that he's collecting very interesting things here.
Yeah, I have a very funny example of this from very recently. I purchased some weird NFT. I'm not even going to say what it was. I mean, not super weird, but like a strange one. And then I was having a conversation with my girlfriend, and I was saying something. I think I was talking about buying a TV, and I said no, this 5,000
Ah,
pound TV is too expensive. And she turned and said, what about these NFTs you bought? And I thought, oh no. And she'd obviously like looked at my wallet or OP account or whatever, and seen recent purchases in an attempt to make some money trading NFTs that went terribly wrong. But I thought I thought I should probably get a new Ethereum wallet after that.
most likely, yeah.
Mm.
And don't link it to your Twitter. Yeah, it's like,
No.
oh no, baby, this is completely different. This is art. This is something else. Like,
Yeah, this is art. We can hang it on the wall.
yeah, it's crazy. So ENS, by the way, in it of itself, is this Ethereum naming kind of system. So it's becoming very popular. And Amir, you try to purchase something, like you say that most of the names are already gone, right?
Yeah, if well, it's divided. If you look at three-character names, yeah, 90 something percent of them are gone. Four-character names, you still have a lot of opportunities and good names. And the more you go, the more availability and less it costs, but it's really picking up. And have, of course, the same privacy issues. You see so many people changing their Twitter name to .eth, and basically you see all their holdings, all their NFTs, all their financial activity, which is completely broken.
Yeah, I agree. It's so, like, for me it's strange. Like when I see somebody's doing that, I'm like, why would you do that? So I understand uh, the need to show off a little, but like I really hope they have a specific account for that, and don't use it for everything, because this would just be uh, redundant, in my opinion. So speaking of which, um, we are going to try to build a confidential ENS on Beam. It's not kind of an announcement right now. We are going to research that, obviously, and create some kind of proof of concept. But it seems from some like preliminary discussions that I had today that it will be possible. And the difference will be that you will have a public ID, a public name that you will be able to register. But then anyone can use it to send you something, but no one will be able to see all of the other transfers that you have received to this identity. And in my opinion, if we manage to do that, it would be really awesome privacy feature and application to add to Beam network, and can be like very useful and definitely much more private than the current solution.
Yeah, I mean, like, I can definitely see like the appeal of people signing up for the ENS names and this kind of. I mean, you have an easy to remember address that you can people that doesn't freak them out with a big string of characters or whatever. Easy to remember and more friendly, and but like you mentioned, the on the Ethereum and on the other chains that lack privacy. I mean, it's very scary as to like how much information you give up if you have such a public address on your Twitter or this kind of thing.
Like in terms of like, yeah, so in terms of like where it can be used, I think NFT is just like very kind of like in general basic example, but as Web3 technology and applications develop, I think you will really use this for a lot of different things, and it's going to become almost ubiquitous, and like just like the .com domains today, like nobody even thinks about it, right? You use it automatically, and you don't even like consider how it works. But if this domain at the same time links together all of your financial transactions with your NFT transactions and with other operations that you are doing in a way that they can be all automatically, simply, presented and covered, I think it really won't work like for most people. But then if you do have several wallets, like one with the ENS or like more kind of public stuff, and then the other one without for different stuff, so it's going to complicate an already complicated process, and it's not going to work. So I do think that there should be a solution that allows you to kind of use this anywhere you want, but with more safety and privacy, and without kind of worrying that now everybody knows like everything you just by clicking on one name.
Yeah, exactly. And I think like one thing that many people miss is like now they think now it's not an issue, but because like the chain is transparent for many cases, it doesn't necessarily have to be now that it's an issue because it's going to be there forever. So someone can come back in a few years or when more like technology has sort of advanced and even more public information about who you are sending money to and receiving it from, and this kind of stuff would be still there, obviously.
Yeah, speaking of what you just mentioned, like if somebody sends you something you don't want,
Yeah.
and even if you send it back or whatever you are doing, the record of that fact is still there for all eternity, and you cannot do anything about it. And in a few years, go explain. Oh no, that was, somebody just airdropped me this. Like, oh yeah, really, it's really a problem.
Yeah, definitely.
So it's really interesting. I was it was funny. I was visiting my parents, and my mother looked like said, your avatar in Telegram. I heard these things are worth a lot of money these days.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, mom, not this specific one. Yeah, but at least you cannot see what else I have, right? But she didn't get it, obviously, but that was the joke. It was actually an interesting kind of evening because they asked me about what we're doing and things like that, and obviously like I can't really explain too much of it, but I really wanted to try. So I tried to explain in a few words what Web3 means, and then at some point my father says like, wait a minute, but it's exactly like going back to the time we didn't have internet, right? So you say like everything should be like local and decentralized, and the data should belong to you. But yeah, but that's how it was before it was connected to the internet, right? You had your PC, not the way maybe you had a modem and connected to some BBS services, but everything was on your like 120 megabyte hard drive or whatever it was. And I'm like, yeah, but not exactly, right? So it's not like exactly we're going back to this era before everything was connected. It's still connected, but you are kind of more in control of how this information is treated, who holds it, right? Who can do something with it. So this is more about that, not exactly, cutting the cord.
True. Yeah. Back before there was, I guess, no big like cloud computing and sort of taken off in more recent years.
Yeah, but in some ways it does go kind of in a circle, because the cloud computing made, in addition to a lot of benefits in terms of kind of costs of running your own servers versus just renting some, which is, in my opinion, very important, because now anyone with a laptop can start a software company or a product and just it on Amazon or any other service and pay very little until there are actually customers who use the product and then scale up. So it's something that was not possible before because you needed to buy servers, you needed to install them somewhere, pay for the traffic in advance. But on the other hand, this idea that the data is completely outside of your control and you really don't know how it is used and who can, tomorrow you can kind of lose access because of either censorship or any other problem, and you don't have too much alternative to even consider. So that's kind of becoming an issue these days. Just today I saw some tweets about some Web3 and crypto accounts being removed from YouTube, I think it was.
Yeah, I saw this also.
And
I think it's back on way.
Okay.
It was Bankless, one of the biggest podcasts, most popular podcast in the past, I don't know, few months. And yeah, it became fully dark, but now I see it's up again. So probably it was some not even human error, I think.
Yeah, but it's first of all, I'm glad that they're back, and definitely, and I also hope they're compensated for lost revenue. But it's still kind of, I don't know, not really nice. Like you have to, if your entire business and your entire kind of revenue stream depends on this content that you're creating, and suddenly you lose this ability, it's an issue. However, it's not an issue that is simple to fix. Like it's not something that you can do by just installing house or even connecting some nodes in the network because of the amount of traffic and the amount of servers and computing power that you need to provide support these kind of applications. I think it's quite a lot. And this is exactly the challenge, like one of the key challenges that we will see in the Web3 world, right? So how to decide which parts of the system should be decentralized and which should be hosted centrally. Like caching obviously should be central because they're not the source of truth, they're just caching, right? So you should be able to get access to the information quicker. I'm talking like CDN and similar services. But 2 days ago, I think it was, I saw something very interesting. Somebody complained that someone took their code from GitHub and just re-uploaded. I mean,
oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was some project. I don't remember exact name. And like now, what do you do, right? So there is no proof of. So or maybe there is some proof of original ownership, but now you have to go to GitHub and argue, right? And in the meantime, somebody else is basically using your code under their name. It's classic plagiarism.
Yeah, I mean, this is it comes back to this thing that's come up a little bit in a different context, but also very relatable is a source of truth, and all the stuff going on with Twitter being purchased by Elon Musk, and now everyone's worried about disinformation and the truth, and how do we find the truth and who's deciding the truth. And I mean, this is something that blockchains, at least in terms of timing, is very good at.
Absolutely.
And I think that Source will really step up there in terms of having this all more decentralized and this kind of thing.
Yeah, I think we talked about it with Rascal, I don't know, 2 years ago, proof of origin, because sometimes I go into websites to read some article and there is not even a date on it, right? So they decided not to put it's dateless, right? It never gets solved. And it's not a simple task to find out when that article was written, actually.
Yeah, it's super difficult, to find and I've seen lots of this online recently about I forget what they call themselves, open source Intel network people that are like trying to find like the origin of different photos or videos and this kind of thing. And like for an average individual like myself, it's near impossible to sort of find the original of a lot of these things.
I totally agree. Not to mention the fact that with today's technology, you can fake things that you would never have believed possible.
Yeah, yeah, this is crazy.
Yeah. No, so this is exactly these things that I think that like blockchain and Web3 technologies, which do provide these capabilities very easily, like this should be definitely one of the key, uh, you know, uses, at least for that, right? Because like otherwise, you get lost in the sea of information, like you are today in cases. Another thing is about identity and how like your identity is reflected in what you're doing online, and like in terms of sometimes you do want to let other people know that it's you. Sometimes you don't. Like it's up to you, obviously, but um, whether we're talking about like article authors or like creators. By the way, this is something that in the NFT world is very well done. Like you can always see who created this. This it was.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily know like the exact person, but you do know that these like works were created by this artist. And like I think it's easier. Like I do like I see a lot of accounts and projects that are trying to find these people who like replicate other people's job and steal like steal ideas and steal implementations and the design. So it's easier when you know the exact block height at which it was minted, and like where the origin was and what time. So it's kind of more simpler to do that.
True.
Cool. Do we have anyone with any question or anyone wanted to say something? Because if not, we will just talk about other things.
Any questions? We have one request coming in from Ruskell.
It's good.
Hello.
Hello.
Hey.
I just wanted to put a shout out for my bounty that I've got going on. We're looking for anybody to compile an article that compares Beam with any list of what is known as top privacy coins. Obviously, in a sense that to compare, really, more than anything else. You can see that tweet on my timeline, or in the Telegram channels. There's a few BMX to be earned if anybody's up for writing that.
So it's funny you should mention it because just earlier today I was talking to Dima Bonder, who is working with us as chief tokenomist, or like somebody who really understands well all the tokenomics issues. And like I don't know if that's exactly what you had in mind, but he is currently on a comparison or like more like statistical analysis of Beam price over the last like 3-something years of the existence. And I will definitely send you the materials, like even in the draft form before he publishes it. But he did reach an interesting conclusion that Beam is, let's say, not very correlated with Ethereum, let's say, right? So it's kind of a good asset to diversify with, right? So this is like one of the conclusions that he reached. And he compared it, the price to, I think, also Bitcoin, and he also compared volatility between Beam and Monero and Zcash over the last year. So at least in the statistical kind of analysis, we'll have some results that he will provide soon in an article.
Cool, that sounds really interesting. Dima's articles are always well worth a read anyway. He's done a few for us there. So.
Yep. So I was actually like a little bit surprised because according to his analysis, BIM is kind of a stable coin in a way. not like not really stable, but less volatile than some other actives out there. Like I like when it's not volatile down. Like I would love it to be more volatile up, but that's something else.
I have a question relating to this. Will Source or will something else sort of enable such bounties like Rascal is offering to be done via a DApp or similar?
Absolutely, yeah. So Source, one of the key kind of feature verticals that is considering is actually related to funding, which means like donations and bounties. Yeah, that's for sure. It's not going to be the prime focus of Source at first, but in general, I think, yeah, it's a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, like there's a lot of stuff that can be done and contributed from like within the project's community, but outside the main teams and this kind of thing. And I think that's a great kind of addition to what Source will already offer.
Totally. I think this would actually be a good integration for for Twitter or similar services, right? So you can ask a question and then let's set a bound on the answer.
True.
Without having to go anywhere. Yep. Yeah. Source will definitely do it.
We have a question from Joe S in Telegram. Will the team create a DApp that allows for the creation of a confidential asset? Most don't use the CLI wallet. Okay, I think I've seen Joe bring this up in the chat a few times, and he is talking about like an easy interface that you can spin up a confidential asset with that is very like user friendly rather than using the CLI wallet.
Great question. So the way it went down historically was that when we have created this feature and we didn't have smart contracts, the idea was like you only create an asset, a new asset type every once in a while. And that's why it's not kind of a feature that at that time was considered to be used by a lot of users, often, which is why we left it in this kind of command line wallet level back then. When you create new asset types through adding, let's say, a pair to like a pool in the DEX, obviously you're using the DEX DApp interface, right? So you don't need CLI to do that. You just add, let's say, a couple of new assets, and you create a new pair. So you want to create an LP token for it, and it's done through the contract. But today, this question is, I think, really, well timed because. So when you create a new asset type using a wallet, you are the owner of this asset. You do need to be able to provide kind of an explanation what it's about, what are the rules, or if you are creating it through the contract or the application that you have developed yourself, then you need to provide an explanation what this application does, so people can use it in their wallets and understand it. So I don't know. Still, I'm kind of not sure it's 100% justified to develop it as the UI wallet feature. But good question. We should definitely raise it and think about it. It's not the first time it came up, by the way. So it was kind of discussed, but we need to understand exactly what the use cases are. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry for cutting you off. I kind of echoed Joe's suggestion because I also saw it in the chat. And while initially it made a lot of sense, and it's going to be nice to have or cool to have, but when you think about the thought, there's like at the end, if it's hard for you to mint a CA on a CLI, it's going to be very challenging for you to make something meaningful out of this CA. And combining that with the fact that soon CA will probably be cheaper, it's basically a great tool to start any project, but it's a great tool to just spam the network in a very easy way. Not that I'm too concerned about it, but I think the risks are higher than the value it will add in a way, because it's a feature that is not aimed for developers, it's aimed for users and regular users, and those will not necessarily develop out of the CA other than minting the CA. I do want. I'm going to finish it. I do think that we have a growing of like DAO tools we want to publish. Will be probably this will be one of them.
Yep, I agree. So yeah, that's the situation. Any other questions so far? Okay. I'm officially out of topics.
I have a question. I have a question kind of related. What do you see as like or in terms of confidential assets that will be issued on Beam, which do you see as being the most interesting?
So for sure, any breached confidential assets, obviously, because you will be able to have your existing value and transfer to Beam and trade it confidentially. I think that LP tokens can be also confidential assets. Like basically any asset, even if it was initially created inside a contract, can be converted into a new type of confidential asset, including NFTs. We have discussed it back in the day. It's not a feature that we currently have, and I'm not sure it will be added to the first version of the new NFT gallery. But you have this ability to take NFT out of the contract, convert it into a unique type of confidential asset, which only exists in one instance, and then trade it confidentially. So I think that the example I used back then was when you buy a picture from like a museum, then you bring it home and put it in your vault, and then you sell it to some other kind of private person who puts it in his vault, and then at some point somebody puts it back in the museum or in the gallery, so it can be sold publicly. So this is something that is only possible on Beam because of this unique combination, this hybrid approach that allows us to convert UTXOs into contract and back. I don't know how widely used it will be, but I think that at least in NFTs, but I think in many other cases it will be used widely. The ability to take something some value out of the contract, convert it into a new type of asset and trade it or store it confidentially. Almost anything that has value, I think, should be a CA.
I think it'll be very interesting to be able to trade the bridged over assets and this kind of stuff. I think this will be a huge use case for Beam. I mean, what we were talking about earlier with the UST and this kind of stuff, and in one of the internal chats, people were sharing some links about transactions that were being made kind of while the depegging was kind of going on, and it will be very, at least for me, it will be very interesting with trading going on, but you not being able to see exactly the movements in the background.
Yeah, and you definitely will not be able to do what Juno did. Is basically
yeah.
And that should not be allowed.
Yeah.
You both talk about trading use cases. One of the major use cases I can see, probably not in the near future, is bridge governance token from, let's say, Ethereum, Binance Smart Chain, whatever, and use Beam voting to vote privately. Like voting should be private, and nowhere in the space, almost nowhere in the space, you have even the ability to vote privately. And I think bridge asset with voting rights is also outside of Beam.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it can be, in fact, like it can be even like almost kind of transparent for some cases. So you don't even need to kind of necessarily need to do any explicit bridging. You can bridge this implicitly, like from the back end, and then conduct the vote on confidential chain. I think it's also possible. But yeah, for sure.
Oh, have another question from Joe S in Telegram. Could you talk a little bit about the AMM and the high frequency transactions and how this will work on Beam?
Yeah. So the idea is that whenever you're doing a trade, you're basically having some effect on the current state of the pool. And if you are sending your transaction and then you have to wait for the block to be mined on Beam, which takes 1 minute on average, but we know that it can be like more or less. And you only know the result of your transaction, like what effect it had exactly only after the block is mined, and then you can kind of take the next step or make the next decision. It's not going to be good enough for efficient and quick like trading that you would expect from a DeFi platform. So the idea of the high frequency transactions is to allow you to make your decision even before the next block is mined by analyzing the state of the mempool at this moment when you are sending your transaction and putting additional conditions on your transaction. So you're saying, okay, I want to be after this transaction that I currently see. And if this transaction for some reason is not going into the next block, I don't want my transaction to be in there either, because my calculations or like my trade is dependent on that transaction before me. So you can make these decisions quite faster as the mempool evolves before the block is mined. And it is up to the application and to whoever writes the DApp to use this mechanism. So it's not like automatically done by the system, right? The app that is managing this specific AMM is the one responsible for this business logic of analyzing like what it should do and what it shouldn't do, right? Like just to give an example, let's say you have this max slippage that you set, right? This is like, by the way, one of the interesting problems I would say in Ethereum pools that sometimes people don't exactly understand the meaning of slippage, and they think that's basically the price impact that they're doing when they're trading. So when they do large trades, they increase the slippage, and that allows minor extractable value. But the idea is that when you're analyzing like what parameters to set on your trade, you take into consideration the current state of the mempool and not just the mined blocks. And this allows you to make decisions much quicker. And if for some reason your kind of chain, right, because now the mempool becomes this sort of a tree, and your subtree with your transaction is not going in, you can see that when the block is mined, and you can then update your decisions accordingly. But at least you will not be in a situation when you thought the conditions were like something and they were in fact completely different. I really hoped it made sense. Turned out a little bit complicated.
Definitely add some color to it. I think this as soon as the talk gets too technical, my brain struggles to keep up. But I think that like the AMM on Beam and also with confidential assets is going to be very like interesting times.
Yeah, it's going to be amazing, and it's not very far. Like It's actually sooner than we think. It's coming.
Nice. Do we have any more questions?
In this case, I think we can wrap this one up.
Absolutely, yeah. And before we go, I will remind everyone about the confidential asset one, the forum post that's discussing about the reduction. If you haven't yet, head to the forum and throw some thoughts up. And also the vote will most likely, confirmation tomorrow, will most likely be happening on the forum. As said, it will be the last, most likely the last off-chain vote that we have, and it's happening this way, given that it needs to happen before the hard fork, and voting won't be live until the hard fork. We will have details on how exactly the voting will be taking place tomorrow, and I will share in the newsletter. So prepare for that accordingly.
Right. So thanks for joining, and don't forget to vote, and we'll see you next week as usual.
Absolutely. See you next week. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jess.
Bye, guys.
Yeah. Bye.
See you
Have a
then.
great evening.